A tanker is heading to the port of Tema. Its cargo, 320,000 barrels of refined petroleum products loaded at Vysotsk in Russia. The vessel, identified as the Hellas Fighter, was spotted passing the waters of Mauritania at the end of March 2026, tracking data confirms. Its destination is Ghana's main oil hub, and its arrival tells a story that goes far beyond a single shipment. The development highlights Ghana's ability to cushion itself against global fuel supply disruptions linked to the ongoing Iran conflict, unlike many sub-Saharan African countries that rely heavily on Middle Eastern imports. While Kenya, Zambia, and Mozambique have struggled with fuel shortages and long queues at filling stations, Ghana's diversified sourcing strategy has offered resilience against disruptions affecting shipments through the Strait of Hormuz. But to understand what this shipment means, we need to go back a few years. For most of Ghana's recent history, Russian crude was not part of the country's energy equation. Ship tracking data shows that Russia had sent no crude to Ghana since at least October 2018, a gap of nearly 5 years. That changed in February 2023, when Bloomberg broke the story that a tanker carrying Russian oil was heading for storage tanks in Tema. That tanker, the Theseus, arrived in Ghana's territorial waters carrying approximately 600,000 barrels. Sources at the state-owned Tema oil refinery confirmed the facility took delivery of the cargo into their tanks. The arrival was not without controversy. The CEO of Ghana's National Petroleum Authority, Dr. Mustafa Abdul Hamid, stated that if the cargo was destined for the country it would be blocked. The NPA had publicly declared any Russian oil business illegal, citing Ghana's alignment with the international community. But the oil arrived anyway. Industry sources confirmed the Russian crude belonged to the Tema-based Platon Gas Oil, a privately owned refinery established in 2014, which had a long-standing contract with TOR to use their facility for storage. The 600,000 barrels, worth more than $46 million, were to be refined for sale on the Ghanaian market. That first contested shipment opened a door. By the second half of 2023, the flows had become more consistent and more official. Ghana was preparing to receive its second shipment of Russian crude that year, a 1 million barrel cargo exported by Gazprom Neft that left the northern port of Murmansk aboard the Greek-owned Nissos Tinos. The supplier this time was not a private trader operating in a gray zone. It was a subsidiary of Gazprom, one of Russia's most significant state-linked energy companies. Russia's largest private oil company Lukoil and Gazprom's subsidiary Gazpromneft delivered 1 million barrels of Arctic-grade crude to Ghana's oil refinery in Tema, with ship tracking data confirming that Russia had sent no crude to the country since at least 2018 before that initial spring delivery of Siberian light crude. The shift was geopolitical as much as it was commercial. After sanctions were imposed on Russia following the invasion of Ukraine, the nation directed crude exports toward China and India, upending global oil flows and the maritime industry. With Europe previously having been by far the largest market for Russian oil, that narrowed the nation's pool of buyers dramatically. It also meant barrels had to be discounted at the point of export to compensate for relatively high delivery costs. Russia needed new markets. Ghana, sitting at the edge of West Africa with growing refining infrastructure and no sanctions obligations, was a logical destination. By the end of 2023, the numbers were telling. Ghana had received an average of 25,000 barrels per day of gas oil from Russia by the close of that year. And in the full trade data, Ghana's imports from Russia of mineral fuels and oil distillation products reached $955 million, according to United Nations Comtrade data. Russia had emerged as the country's second-largest supplier of petroleum products, accounting for about 18% of mineral fuel imports. To understand why Ghana could absorb these volumes, you have to look at what has been happening in Tema. The Sensuo oil refinery started operations in January 2024 and will have a final capacity of close to 120,000 barrels per day. The plant was built by the Chinese Sensuo Group as part of China's Belt and Road Initiative and is located at the Tema Industrial Zone. It is designed to run medium to heavy crude oil and is able to process Ghanaian crudes, with a partial baseload supply of domestic grades negotiated directly from the government. The arrival of Russian crude fits naturally into that appetite. The refinery needs feedstock. Russia has discounted feedstock to move. The geography makes sense. Russian crude arriving in Ghana is processed at the Sensuo plant, while the nearby Tema oil refinery, which is not currently operating, provides storage. The Sensuo Group is not slowing down. The Chinese downstream firm announced a $980 million investment to enhance its refinery capacity in Tema, supporting a second phase that aims to boost throughput by 3 million metric tons per year. Sensuo has secured a full operational license for the project and seeks to help Ghana reduce oil imports, ensure energy self-reliance and bolster job creation. When fully built out, the combined capacity of the Sensuo facility will approach 100,000 barrels per day, a figure that would fundamentally reshape Ghana's energy profile. With increased shipments of Russian oil flowing into Tema, Bloomberg has suggested Ghana may be looking to become a bigger regional supplier in West Africa. The country sits in a strategically advantageous location. Lukoil already owns a 38% stake in the Deepwater Tano project in Ghana's offshore zone, where deposits are estimated at 450 to 550 million barrels. Russian commercial ties to Ghana's upstream sector predate the current geopolitical moment. The crude trade is, in some respects, an extension of a longer relationship. Now, in 2026, the latest shipment, the 320,000 barrels aboard the Hellas fighter, arrives in a changed environment. Ghana's National Petroleum Authority insists the country does not depend on any single source and continues to benchmark its fuel pricing against the Northwest Europe market. The Netherlands remains Ghana's largest fuel import source. Nigeria's Dangote refinery is emerging as a closer regional alternative, with industry observers noting that proximity makes it an increasingly attractive option for Ghana going forward. But the arrival of Russian fuel, in a quantity that represents more than twice Ghana's average daily crude production of around 130,000 barrels per day, is not a minor footnote. It is a statement about where Ghana's energy supply chains are heading. When launching the Sensuo refinery in January 2024, the Ghanaian president acknowledged that the country relied on imports for 97% of its petroleum products. That is the structural reality that every shipment into Tema is trying to address. Ghana produces crude. It exports most of that crude. It then imports finished petroleum products to fuel its own economy. Breaking that cycle requires refining capacity at scale, and refining capacity at scale requires feedstock from wherever it is available and affordable. The arrival of the Russian shipment underscores Ghana's continued reliance on multiple international suppliers to maintain stable fuel availability amid global uncertainty. That framing is accurate as far as it goes. But beneath the official language of supply diversification is a more complex story. A country navigating the contradictions of a geopolitically fractured global oil market, building new refining infrastructure with Chinese investment, absorbing Russian crude that Western sanctions have pushed southward, and attempting to translate all of it into fuel security for a domestic economy that still imports the vast majority of what it burns. The Hellas fighter is expected to dock in Tema. The 320,000 barrels will be unloaded. The refinery will process what it can. And Ghana once again will find itself at the intersection of global energy politics, not as a passive recipient, but as an increasingly deliberate actor in a world where oil, sanctions and infrastructure are reshaping the map.